All right, we'll call the meeting to order. We got Scott Newman, Scott Roberge, John Murgas, Don Spiegelmeier, and Bob Martin here, and then we have Joel Randrup on the phone. So Casey Knight is absent and excused. So let's quick look at our minutes from the last meeting to get back up to speed here. Anyone has any questions about them? I think that meeting was dominated by the land swap, considering the alternatives. And, no objection,
I'll move to accept the meeting, the minutes of the meeting. Second.
all in favor? Approving the
Second.
minutes? Okay. No. And look over the agenda here. Is there anything you'd like to add, anyone?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add at the end of the in discussions, policies and procedures, very brief, because I know I'm going to be pretty tired at that point. Just discuss policies and procedures of our meetings.
Sounds good. Anyone else? All right. And board position selection. I guess we need a nominee for vice chair. That's how I got here. And if anyone wants to take that on, I'd be happy to even work with you or even trade off with you if you wanted to practice or anything like that. I guess we just need to have that spot filled.
How about Scott?
Since I just entered the picture, I wouldn't mind a little bit of time.
A little bit more than the rest of
to
us.
get accustomed to.
Yeah.
Give me a little bit. I'm on here for 3 years. Look at me next year.
Do we have to fill it now, or could we leave it open for?
You have a Scott?
Actually, we have one missing member. We
Yeah.
can put it on him.
Hey,
Casey, yeah. That's right.
I think it's just kind of a, it's a figurehead, but it is a nice training tool.
Yeah, maybe
if
we'll
the
leave it open, and hopefully somebody will
Okay,
slide into that. Then I can just.
we'll just keep
sneak
it on the
off. I can
agenda.
sneak off. Yeah. Okay. How are you doing there, Joel? You hearing everything okay?
Yeah, sounds good. I can hear you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good. All right. Are there any people who'd like to speak unrelated to the agenda? The only people present, Joel, are Jake Slavin and Joe Vicnicki. Okay. Anything related to the agenda? All right. That takes us to Glow's staff report.
Okay, thank you, guys. You probably had a chance to read through it, but I'll just kind of review. Staff has been going great. We've got a full team. Everybody is working really great, so fingers crossed that'll maintain. I didn't put this in here, but just to give you a heads up on kind of the upcoming events. We've got some guys out on vacation. They kind of try and take it before the real snowy time starts to hit. Guys are required to take X amount. They have to take 10 days a year, just that standard procedure here at the borough. They can sell some time, but a lot of them have other things going, so they do end up taking days here and there, and we work pretty good through the schedule. I am 5 months pregnant, and so hopefully in end of February, first part of March, I'll be taking 3 months off, and Eddie will step in and then take the reins for me. So that's not on your list, but on the report, but that's kind of what's in the future here. But I should be back, and then for the summer season. North Harbor, all's going well, normal cleanup, upkeep on the floats. Just a heads up that the fire shed, it's a brand new fire shed that's 20-some years old, and the foundation's starting to get pretty soft on it. So we're looking at potentially just replacing the float and at some point. So that'll probably be one of the next big projects. Middle Harbor, we continue to monitor the siltation coming from Hammer Slough that deposits under the ramp landing in the main float area. It's a big concern. 10 years ago, we dredged out and put in a basin, which shortly after that, we had the failure up at the Public Works that filled it in quite quickly. We dredged it again, but it continues to build up. So this is part of that dredge, on the dredge project for the South Harbor. So just a heads up, it's getting to be, I have pictures of -4 tides where the float is starting to go dry now. And so it's gonna compromise that landing float and the ramp at some point. So it's definitely on our radar. South Harbor, we did another round of finger float repair with replacement of hinges and flotation. If you remember, those are built in 1984, the older section of the South Harbor. So that's probably our next big, real maintenance project. When she was built, she was planned for 40 years. She's 36 years old now. So we're looking at, really, we're over the honeymoon stage. So now we're doing a lot of just maintenancing and repairs on the older section of floats. And I'm hoping to get them to 50-plus years. The North Harbor was 70 before we replaced it. But one of the things, that we have to do is replace flotation billets and continue to restabilize that facility. We also hired a diver to clean the water line. Growth builds up on that water line, and what happens after a couple of years, then the tide and current will grab it and start pulling off all of the individual jumper hoses, and so that we end up with major water leaks down there if that happens. I have the evening guys every day check the meters for all 4 facilities, the harbors plus the drive down. So we are catching them within 24 hours. And we have a log that they write the numbers down, and so you can check and you can compare year to year, because some days in the South Harbor we'll use a lot of water if the fleet's in and the cruise ships are in and that kind of stuff. So we have a good reference, but that's how we catch these things.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Uh-huh.
Is that hard black plastic stuff? What kind of hose is that?
There's a flexible hose that comes off of that to each pedestal.
Okay.
And so...
And it's all just exposed underwater?
Yeah, it's underwater. Yep. And the reason why it's flexible like that is so that when we do have an issue, you can disconnect it and pull it up. If it was all rigid, then you couldn't access it. So we have, play in the system in order for us to pull it up and work on it, replace, we always have a couple in the shop getting replaced. Just so that we're ready.
Where's the water meter at?
They're up in the parking lots.
Okay.
So we-
South Harbor,
Yep.
south?
They're for all harbors. They're on the upland. And so we go with our meter and we can read it
Okay.
and get those numbers. And up in they're all in the upland. We do the drive down, we do the harbors in each city. So we read those every day. We've assembled a couple of new floats in the spring, late or early summer. One of them straddles 3 finger floats, kind of off the stern of the G&C. We primarily put that in just because we're getting so many of these harbor tours where we have visitors organized by the tour ship companies, and they tend to bottleneck areas of the harbor. So we thought, we'll put that in. That'll be a nice place for them to be able to view the harbor, get an idea of what's going on, and they can kind of hold court there, off the main drag, out of the way. So it went well. We had some old benches that we put in there, and we put in a safety ladder so in case somebody falls overboard, and just things like that. But it seemed to go well. It's kind of a nice gathering spot. I think there was
Definitely used.
Yeah, it really was, and I think people, the location of it is really, we thought that through, and we came up with a good location so that people can really describe what's going on on the different commercial boats, so, anyway.
Did we lose revenue from giving up those 2 stalls?
Well, we're not full. The 400 row is not full because it needs to be dredged so bad. So we used 3 that were not being, currently, we didn't kick anybody out. But yeah, if the place was full, we sure would have.
Do we never hit full attendance there in the summer?
No, we don't because of the dredge situation.
Okay.
So, yeah. Hey, do you guys want to, there's agendas right there if you want them. Then the other new platform is the new fire shed, and we're making it a little bigger so it can handle some maintenance equipment as well. The price of steel went up so high, we couldn't afford to do it last year as we had budgeted for, so we bridged last year over into this year. So we should be getting this new a kit to put the building together. Went through Joe and all of that, so it's all up to code and everything, and assembled that here over the winter time. We're hoping to get that delivered here in the next couple weeks. So we'll assemble all that and get the fire equipment there in a decent manner.
Interruption. Is that their equipment or ours, the 4-wheelers and stuff like that?
It's ours. We buy it for them to use. We own it. The harbor owns it. A crane dock, all is well there. We passed the annual inspection. We recommend, with the recommendation of putting a shroud around the motor on the small crane. He's the same guy that comes up and does all of the other commercial cranes around. We piggyback with Icicle and Ocean Beauty if they're around, or whoever else is doing crane inspections. And so he's been really great to work with. South Harbor Grid, we installed a new water line this fall. It'll be a lot easier to turn on and off for the season, as well as if there's breaks. Drive down, normal cleaning, underground valve seal had to be replaced this early summer after we noticed some water loss there. It was a pretty easy fix, but there was a period of time where we had to shut the water down in between tour ships just because we were partly worried about erosion that was going down in the fill, but also we didn't want to lose water. So we have an issue down there with birds in the wintertime. So a couple years ago, you probably remember people complaining about the noise maker that we had down there, which we still do. We put them up in the fall. It goes on at night when the birds show up. They're attracted by the lights because it's lit up all night. And so they're starting to get used to the noise. So we're having, this problem with 1,000 birds down there. And the reason why it's a problem is they poop, and then we're down there cleaning, and it turns into, everything from green slime to, getting caught on all of the cracks, so that, just the runoff is, what it's like. Anyway, every time we go down to wash it, it's getting harder and harder. So we started doing a little bit more inquiring about what other places do and what airports do. And they are using lasers. So we got on the internet and found a couple of laser light shows that we can get. So we did. And we have been going down there. I also bought the guys a couple of $10 laser pens just to try it out to see if it really does work. By golly, it does. They do not like this laser. This green or red are the colors that they don't like. And you go down and you point it on their body or whatever, and they get all excited and off they go. So we found for a couple $100 these laser light shows that just have various patterns. And we're going to try and mount them up high. It's light down there, so I don't think the human being will really recognize it as a big disco or anything, but it's enough to hopefully keep the birds from landing and roosting there. And it's this year's fix, so we hope. Anyway, that's been kind of exciting.
Comment, are you avoiding the retinas of the birds?
I can't speak to that because it's a light show. So it'll be just like those Christmas lights that are on the side of a house. but it's something that is licensed for bird deterrent, so it's not like we have to worry about, burning retinas out or anything like that. It's pretty low voltage or low current, whatever that term is. Scout Bay, we continue to monitor it daily, and we've been working with John to target specific potholes versus resurfacing and rolling the whole area in hopes to keep the people out of there doing brodies and stuff. If we make it too nice, then they love to come down there and hang out, so we've been kind of just targeting specific areas. So we've been buying the fill, and John's been filling the holes that need to be filled, and it's been, I guess, working okay.
It's an improvement.
Yeah. Port storage, we reclaimed the Nielsen Port lease, so we scraped the area and resurfaced it for drainage. So if you've been out there, or if you haven't been out there, take a tour. It's really nice. It's all, it's all drains really well. Guys, we've got real organization with trailers. Again, we've been using that port storage area for things that can go down the highway, and the approach for things that can't go down the highway without a DOT permit. So usually the bait houses and that kind of stuff stays, short trawls, that kind of stuff stay at that approach, and then we send the trailers and those kind of things down to the port storage, which is used a lot.
So that was a big chunk that Nielsen had.
Yeah, he took over from, do you remember the woodworker, guy that used to do, what's his name? What was it?
McFadden.
McFadden, yeah, Dave McFadden. So they took that over, and then they...
And now, I haven't been there in a while now, is that going, are you piecemealing that out?
Yep. Yep, we've got crab pots there, we've got about, 4 or 5 different tender trailers full of tender gear. And
Is that the way things are kind of going? People are doing the piecemeal rather than a large?
Well, yeah, every once in a while I have somebody come in and ask, like we had Ace Electronics talk about, enlarging their footprint. I've had other people come and talk. Primarily, the interest there is for support for the shipyard. So we've had people that, maybe want to get in there, get power to their own little area so that they could do work at the shipyard.
So there's power available to some of those places?
Well, there's power to the like the end of the Coast Guard, so they'd have to put in their own power.
And like if someone has a bait shed or something there, do they get that same spot back? Is it their spot, or do you just reassign it as
We reassign it.
like a parking lot?
Yep, it's just like a parking lot. Yep. I mean, that's where it would come in, to them to come in and get a permanent long-term lease, and then they have to go through a different, similar to what John has done. He's got, a permanent 5-year lease with a specific portion, and yeah, we do have interest on.
Is the pricing is it the same?
It's based on, depends, it's based on 10% of the value of the property. So we get more money, I would say, in short-term leases, people coming and just doing a month,
That's
monthly.
a rate you set, and the lease rate is
Yeah, is set by code.
code.
Yeah. But there you get, month in, month out, year in, year out.
Who sets the lease rate? Do you or the assembly?
Listen. Yeah. Okay, so budget update, you can look at your budget again, we gave you these handy folders. We're coming in a long line. I'm within $500, $600 of last year's transient revenue. We're really close. We just got word Friday, that our raw fish tax came in, and I'd budgeted $350,000. The breakdown this year was the borough realized $750,000. The first $350,000 went to the general fund, and what was left, which was $399,700, came to the Harbor Enterprise Fund. So that, it's always good to be on the conservative side of that. Otherwise, things look pretty good. The only thing that's really stands out is liability insurance. That came in extremely high. And when I questioned Jody about it, she gave me an email that was sent out, and insurance for our liability all over the borough, we get a portion of that, of course, we're charged a portion of it, went up 85%. Yikes. So that number did go up.
So this is July 1st, starting July 1st, right? The fiscal year?
Yeah, starts July 1.
And so the three columns there, the one on the right, last year's actuals, that's
That's
last year's actuals
at this
to
date.
this time.
Yeah, at this date.
Where's the revenue bond in here?
Where's the revenue bond?
Yeah.
That is under, I have it backwards. It is under, got its own thing, under operating expenses. Let's see it. Let's see, contingency. We have 1 year left. It is maybe she doesn't have it on the monthly. If you look back on your proposed budget, which has a blue, you can see it under debt service right here,
In the folder?
page 42. Yeah. So it was 108, and the interest was 6,800. So the grand total for this year is 115. And I don't see it on the revenue statement.
Better attendance.
What?
Better attendance than I thought.
Oh, yeah, the one you took earlier. Anyway, so that fluctuates, of course, like all bonds do. It goes anywhere from 2%, the highest we've ever paid is 5%. Right now, we're at 3.3%. And like I said, we have one more payment, and then that will be, then we'll be done. We'll be free and clear. The South Harbor will be paid off. Just in time to start worrying about the next thing. So, any other questions about the budget?
Not my expertise.
Right.
Okay, tourship review. I have been participating in that visitor industry group. A report should be coming out in November from all of the findings. Really what that turned into was, there was 20, 30 people at that meeting, lots and lots of questions, lots and lots of, ideas thrown out. Took the summer to kind of make sure that these ideas or these kind of judgment calls we were making, things like that, really were true. And we've had a couple of meetings now just to make sure that we're kind of wrapping everything up, and then they'll present it to Petersburg Economic Development, and they'll pass it on to the Assembly. And I think in between that time, there'll be public review of it. So anyway, that I participated in it just to be from the, kind of the borough side and the mortgage end of the tourship, actual tourship end of things. So anyway, that was been going on, so look for that. There was an AAHPA conference in Juneau, and Eddie went this year representing us. It went well. Lots of things were talked about. I think what they try and do is they do one north and south, and each kind of revolving, and they try and do a bigger community and a smaller community, and again, that's kind of a revolving thing. So next year, it's going to take place in Nome. The other things, we had a meeting this summer, they're not on your list, but that I forgot to write down, where we had a meeting beginning and end of the summer with the captain of the port, Steve White, whom many of us know. We really have an opportunity with him being in the captain's chair. I feel like he really understands what, a lot of the smaller communities go through. And one of his main concerns that he's brought up and is holding a meeting this fall is with a tourship kind of a management. He's concerned about such things like, is Southeast in particular prepared for a mass casualty or a large environmental catastrophe? He makes comments of, the closest tugboat to take, really control of one of these ships is located in Seattle. What would we do? How can we start preparing ourselves for this thing? So he's called for a meeting with the Pilots Association, who is really also very concerned. We're starting to get these mega tour ships in I think we had 4 this year, 3 or 4. And they, at the beginning, the Pilots Association came out and said, we do not feel comfortable having anything to do with these larger tour ships just because we feel like we're not prepared for them to be navigating through some of our narrower areas. And again, the whole backing the captain up with what if there's a casualty, what if there's a mass casualty, or what if there's an environmental issue. So they said, we're not going to be available. And, it's law that they have pilots aboard these ships when they come in the 3 Mile. And so, everybody got them to calm down this year, and they said, okay, fine, we'll do it this year as kind of a trial basis, but we're not going to sign on to do this if we don't start getting some answers for our concerns. So, I believe this is going to be in Juneau. I took it to Steve, who I think brought it to the assembly, to say maybe it would be nice if our lobbyists, both in D.C. and Juneau, could kind of pay attention to this and see where it's going. We may not, see real impacts here immediately because we don't see those size of ships, but boy, would we end up seeing it, environmental issues for all of our fleet as well as, the region. But also economically, what would the impact of something like that have to just all the resources that are available to us? I'm sure that, the state would end up having to initially put part of the bill to be able to deal with this. So anyway, so we brought that up. And then the other thing that we brought up during our meetings before and after the summer was asking the Coast Guard for help with all of the wake issues that we're having here in Petersburg. I think every community has them, but ours are kind of worse because we don't have a lot of protection between us and the Narrows and the tide and the current, and everything gets pretty wicked sometimes during the year, and we see a lot of wave action, and what can we do? And so they don't have the ability to just post somebody out there that's just joling out tickets. But they did bring up the idea of something called the white buoy system, where it's a universally recognized watercraft announcement that there is, to slow your speed, watch your wake during here and here. And they have it in many communities, like outside of Ketchikan, Tongass Narrows there. They have the white buoy system that runs the entire length of their community, and that's the universal symbol. So at least you have a leg to stand on if if you're going to try and go after people that aren't necessarily from this area, even if they are from this area, but if they're not, that's something that if you know your rules of the road, you should be able to recognize. So what that would require is a letter from the assembly. And again, I went to Steve asking for that. So hopefully we can pursue that this winter and maybe get some help on that end of things. So that's all I have.
Questions for Flo?
I got a couple questions.
Okay, Joel.
Yeah, thanks for the report. That's good. I was curious if 2 questions I got is about tourism, and one of them has to do with the harbor as well as any impacts financially potentially that we should be planning on that are kind of unforeseen to throw out there as far as dealing with more load on the infrastructure, more waste, or more use of the harbor facilities. I don't know. And then if you discuss that in your meeting, but the other question was also an impact, and that's coming from being a commercial fisherman that you may or may not have discussed in the group. That is, it will have to do on some of the raw fish tax, so it does affect the harbor a little bit, but that's also more use of the cruise lanes, and that's as far as impacting the, like for example, the gillnet fishery in Sumner Straits. Have people approached me, not wanting to bring that up, I just brought it up myself, but just commenting that there has been more traffic, and unfortunately it's in the lane that we like to fish in out there. And so just as part of your comments for the tourism group, if these couple of things that even come up, as far as affecting the community.
Yes, they have been brought up. We really, we're concentrating on within the borough boundary, and so, it's that definitely has, raised concerns of members of the committee. I don't know how, laws in Petersburg can affect it much, but definitely something I think that the fisheries groups, if they could somehow write letters to the governor and write letters to, at recognizing that these two industries are definitely kind of on a collision course, and, no pun intended, but in a lot of areas, and who gets the right of way.
Right. I think as far as affecting harbor directly and what we're involved in, I'd be concerned with looking out for future impacts monetarily about what we'd be looking at to support this infrastructure that's coming. It doesn't take too much digging around to see that communities are getting set aside if they're not out in front of this. Ketchikan's another good one that they just decided to go ahead, and the Army Corps said we've had enough input from the public into putting in the new infrastructure out there, and there's concerns about that, and I just would like to see Petersburg be in front of this and be a member and be kind of ready for it, instead of reactionary and have them come along more like Juneau, where they just come up and buy a big chunk, and they're coming and they're going to go ahead and do it, and then we have to figure out how to budget for and pay for a new debt load that we're going to have to deal with. So those are about the comments I had. Thanks a lot for the report, Derek.
I think that, just to follow up, Joel, I think that was wisdom by the Assembly to put this together, and that is the main effort, I believe, of this committee, is to be able to recognize what's coming and be able to prepare for it. And so I think we are, it's just a matter of if this report is just going to get shelved, or if it's going to actually, we're going to start doing some things towards putting some of the recommendations into play. And that'll be up to the Assembly. And, a lot of it does involve, money, a lot of it involves just, putting it into a comprehensive plan. But I think that was really I think the community felt that way, and so the Assembly put this committee together, and I think some real good stuff's coming out from it, so pay attention, and I think, if we can kind of use that as a template to work forward from. There was some major concerns about, harbor infrastructure, of course, by me. That being said, these facilities, none of our facilities were originated by this municipality. They all came from either state funding or straight out from DOT. And so when we inherited these facilities, they came with you had to sign, you had to sign that you would keep them as public facilities. So it wouldn't be, I mean, we'd have to fight the state in being able to just say designate them for commercial fishing or some specific group. When we agreed to take the money, the deferred maintenance money, we signed paperwork that said that we would keep these facilities public and open under the Safe Harbor, Act. So there is that. We do have to be a little careful on just shutting specific groups out.
Yeah, well, it'll be a good report to see and know that this that wasn't the direction that I was going anyway, but just kind of looking at the future and making sure that we're ready for new industry or any debt loads that may be incurred and looking forward to resolving those issues.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Joel. John has a question.
Concerning emergency tows, is there anybody to replace Campbell Towing that had the tugs in Wrangell? I don't think they do anymore.
I know of the
Is
closest
there any
one.
home port facility for major tugs like Campbell had?
Ketchikan has the biggest one that is where we would go to, here locally. They have companies. But I asked the question to the captain about, is it ever been on the backs of industry such as the tourism industry, the tour ship companies to provide some of this, support? And they said, like in other regions, I'm thinking, the East Coast, where you have New York and all, some of these big ports. And they said, no, it's all private industry that you call up and say, okay, hired, whatever, to go out and get a vessel in distress. They do not have ships set up on standby. And, and so us up here in Alaska, we're so remote, there's not a lot of business for these ships, for these big tugboats. It would have to be a special, a special, something that we'd have to put together with industry.
Yep.
And, we've had catastrophes, we've had Exxon Valdez, those kind of things that we just waiting for it to happen. And it's, I think we had 4 times this summer where one of those big ships lost power, and they had to ship out, they bring out technicians, they bring out mechanics from the mainland and they were able to get them up and running without there being a problem. But one of these times may not be so lucky. So anyway, people are starting to get worried. And I'm really glad, because I think that's one of our big concerns. Even for the smaller boats in here, we really don't have anything locally that would, we have tenders, that's what you do. You might get the ferry involved if they happen to be here, but there really isn't anything even if we had a 500-footer, a 600-footer, like they're talking bringing in. So it's all kind of relative.
All right. Is that it for the, we're going to move on to unfinished business? Do any of our visitors, you want to revisit visitors' comments? Does anyone there want to speak? Okay.
No, a little late in the agenda, but thanks for the offer. Who's on the phone, may I ask?
Joel Renner.
Oh, thank you. He's still on the board?
Yep.
Oh, okay, so.
And Casey Knight is our new member, but he's not here. Okay, guess we'll roll into the dredging feasibility study, Lo.
Yeah, so this is just ongoing. If you remember, or you maybe are not been following this as closely, of course, that I have, the South Harbor, I'm not sure, do you have in your packet the executive summary? I sent it to her to print out. I'm sorry about that. I sent it to you, but anyway, I don't see it there. Anyway, the highlights.
Couldn't open it up.
Oh,
when,
You couldn't access
yeah.
the link.
Oh, okay.
Was it a windmail.dat format? Is that what the problem was? 'Cause I had to download an app from my iPad that would open those. But,
On my computer, it just gave the same information on the land trade in a different format.
Oh.
So, anyway,
Anyway, well, let me know next time. So the feasibility study, okay, if you remember, we are putting half of the cost of a feasibility study for the South Harbor dredge. That number is about 380,000. We were able to do about 60,000 of in-kind, so we didn't actually get charged that 380, but they did the first 100,000 and we split the difference. So it was about an $800,000 study. That's coming to an end. That's being finalized. The executive summary talks about what they found, the permitting process, what amounts we're going to dredge, all of that kind of stuff. So I apologize for that not being in your packet, but bottom line is we're looking at roughly about 80,000 cubic yards being removed from, 82,000 cubic yards being removed from the South Harbor. It's broken up into two areas, and so if you look at, you guys each have a map in your folder, but for the bigger picture here. So it's broken up into two areas. We are responsible for certain parts. The federal government has recognized that they are responsible for other parts. And so the other part that they're responsible for is kind of the common areas where everybody traffics. It would be around the crane dock, would be this area over here by the Middle Harbor, around all of this, and of course the entrances and the areas between the floats where everybody can travel. We would be responsible for the individual float fingers around here, this area up in here, and we're just looking at this area. So the breakdown came in at about 30,000 yards that would be taken from the common area that the feds are expecting to pay 90% of, and then we would be on the hook for 100% of the local area, which are those individual finger floats. Put it all together, it's about 82,000 cubic yards. So one of the findings, of course, it's a big, I could talk a long time about this, how we got here, but they've recognized there's an issue, they've recognized that the federal government has a part to play in it, and so they are willing to foot about 55% of the entire cost. Breaking out the two, we'd be on the hook for 100% of our local, they'd be on the hook for 90% of their portion, roughly breaks out. One of the things that, so there's good news and there's bad news. It's an expensive project. Start with the bad news. It's going to run about, total, the whole entire project is 10.6 million, of which they will foot 5.8 and we will foot 4.7.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
So the breakdown is 5.8 to 4.7. We'd be on the hook for 4.7. So how do we come up with that? That's something that we're going to have to work through with the community. For you to know, we just got our raw fish tax. We have 3.8 in our savings account now, and which is used for deferred maintenance projects, of which this is the biggest deferred maintenance project we have on the horizon, or the closest horizon. So that's kind of the bad news. How are we going to figure out how to fund this? The good news is that they being the federal government, has deepened the basin. Originally, when we put that basin in, it was dredged at a zero tide. You'd have 18 feet of water, so it's dredged to a minus 18. They're proposing dredging it to a minus 19.25, which will, grow us to about 16 inches of area over and above what it originally was. So that's a really good thing for us looking at the future, hoping we won't have to do this again. The other part of it is that they have worked to get the permits in place. They've worked with EPA and DEC, and they've got the permit in hand to dump this out in open water. If you remember on North Harbor, that wasn't the case. We ended up having to take that fill upland, and because we had to deposit it somewhere, we came up with the idea of using it up at the Baylor facility. So that's where all of those dredge spoils, of which was 22,000 cubic yards, so roughly about a quarter of this amount went up the hill, and it cost the borough about $900,000. The Baylor paid $400,000, the harbor paid $500,000 to get it up there, let it stick and stay, all of that kind of stuff. So 82,000 cubic yards, that's a huge deal to dump it out in front of my house versus trying to locate a place on our island or within our borough that we could deposit this material and maintain it into, perpetuity. So that's the other really good aspect of having the federal government doing this for you. The third thing is not maybe as exciting as it sounds, but the Marine Mammal Protection Act is kind of running rampant on projects like this. They have a permit in hand to maintain a 300-foot or 100-meter radius for marine mammals. So we have to have somebody monitoring this, but shut the project down whenever a whale or a sea lion or something on the endangered species list comes in that area. Right now, Somerville is dealing with a project up in Juneau where it is 1,200 meters. And so he has to hire somebody round the clock, 3 different shifts to monitor and patrol, and they have to sit out in skiffs, all these kind of things to make sure that there isn't a whale or a sea lion within this. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a big deal to get that passed through. So those are some of the, the high points of the federal government working with other federal agencies to get the permitting and process. So there's stuff coming in daily now that this feasibility study is done. We have Somerville on contract to help us with this feasibility study, so I have sent everything for him to review, and Jody and I and Steve are going to sit on Friday at 10 o'clock, you guys are invited if you want, to talk about some of the options that are related to our side of the cost package, because you go, oh my gosh, 4.7 million, that's, it starts to make your heart palpitate. And, right now, I would say that we're going to have to go out to a revenue bond, which has to go to the vote of the public, to the tune of, 1.2 to 1.5 million. Good news is we're retiring a revenue bond this year, which is for about the same amount. And I've checked through Jody, and it's about the same. It'll cost us about the same for a 20-year bond. Right, like I said, it's 3.3 right now is the interest rate, and we've paid as little as 2. We've paid as high as 5 for this bond. So we're right in the neighborhood. You're looking at payments on a 1.5 at 2.5% would be about $95,000 a year. Payments on a 3.5 would be about $110,000 a year. So something that I'm proposing just roll, your mortgage is already covering it, so we would just continue to cover it through the mortgage that we have in place right now, mortgage rate we have in place right now.
When was the last time we had that done, the dredging done?
When it was put in 1982.
82?
Yeah. So just for historical, I'll remind you that, so how this went about is, the beginning of time here in Petersburg, the Corps of Engineers put in the waterfront. And so they were responsible for putting in the basin in the North Harbor. And by putting that in, and the area out in front of the Icicle facility, Ocean Beauty, and Trident, all of those were public facilities that the Corps came in and put in the basins in front of. And so they historically, into perpetuity, have responsibility for them. So this has actually been the third, the 2014 dredge in the North Harbor was the third dredge that has occurred since they initially put it in. So long about 1960, the Corps came back to Petersburg and said, hey, Petersburg looks like it's growing their fleet. It's about time for us to start talking to you about putting in another basin, roughly the area where the South Harbor is now. And at that point, we had just become a state. We had just initiated something called the DOT, Department of Transportation. It had its own line item in the budget. And they said, you know what, we're not interested at this point in the feds doing it. The state's going to start doing it. So the state got in the harbor business, built us the harbor in 1957. In 1970, built the middle harbor, put that basin in. In 1982, they built the basin in the South Harbor, and in 1984, they put that harbor in. They were in the business, and so the federal government went, right, okay, so they shelved everything since 1960 forward. Petersburg really doesn't exist. They're not even so aware of our harbors, our other two harbors, because they were done. They washed their hands of pretty much every community in Alaska, because Alaska got in the harbor building business. Well, since then, in 1996, they realized what they'd done, and they said, you know what, we got to get out of the business. And they gave us 10 years to get our act together. And in 2006, Petersburg took over the last harbor under municipal ownership. So we now own this entire facility, we the people of Petersburg. With that, they gave us some money, and they gave us also the opportunity for the Municipal Harbor Match Grant, which every community that has originally a state-owned harbor can come to the state annually with $5 million and compete in a program called the Municipal Harbor Match Grant that the state could match up to $5 million. So you bring $5 million, the state gives you $5 million, you have essentially enough to build yourself a replacement harbor. So that's all well and good, but specifically in the granting and all legislative granting you will find, they specifically say none of this can go for dredging. I mean, because dredging is such an expensive animal that the state wants nothing to do with funding dredging, because it's not sexy. There's nothing, you can't prove what you've done. I mean, it's a hole in the water that nobody can see, right? So we really are kind of hung out across the state. So after the success with the North Harbor, I didn't know all of this. I've been educated in all of this. When I went to the Corps and said, hey, we got a situation in the South Harbor, we need to get back on this list, because we were the second project in the United States to take advantage of a program called the Section 107. The Corps of Engineers historically puts out hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for ports across the U.S. Rarely does Alaska and some of our smaller counterparts, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, American Samoa, we are too small population-wise to ever compete with Port of LA, Port of New York, Port of Seattle. So we worked diligently with our delegation 10, 15 years ago to get the Corps to recognize that there is a need for these smaller populated areas to qualify for Corps money. Could never get a Corps project. So they came up with this Section 107 where they put aside $50 million annually, and they open it up to all these regions that I've mentioned, and we have the opportunity to get these projects done. So that we were the second project that was funded with the North Harbor. I went to them immediately and said, we got to get the South Harbor on this list. How do we do it? And they said, sorry, you were never a Corps project. You were back to the hole when we became a state. The state put those in. So, kept talking. Lisa Murkowski really championed this for us. And in 2014, I got a call from the Corps that said, we are coming to Petersburg to talk to you because you have a problem. We don't know what it is, and we don't know if we can help you, but we're coming. So 5 people showed up in our office, and I explained them the situation, and they shook their head and said, sorry, we can't help you. But our boss says we got to find a way to help you. So they were here for 3 days. They went on tours of the harbor. They actually looked at boats of 1984 versus boats of 2004. We'd had a couple of brand new Fred Walls brought into the harbor. And they recognized the difference that, times are a changing and the -18 isn't good enough, and that we're filling in. And then we went through and we documented every single boat in the South Harbor. We documented every permit every skipper owned. We documented every crewman, how many kids they had in school, how many fingers they had on each hand. And we came up with the argument that, yes, there is a federal interest. These people are paying federal income tax, and they are harvesting federal fisheries. And so we recognize. So here we are. This started in 2014. Here we are in 2019. Feasibility study's done. They want to break down ground in October of next year, a year from now, and I'm just bringing you up to speed on where we're at. So on Friday, I have a meeting with Somerville, who again is on retainer, to help us through kind of looking at the best options for us. The Corps has a 30-year payment program where maybe we don't have to do 100% through a revenue bond. Maybe we can sign on for the area that they're on the hook for, of which we are going to have to pay roughly about $1.4 million. We can get a portion of that on a slow payment plan. Doesn't mean we have to take 30 years to pay it off, but initially we don't have to cough up the money right away. We can work on that. And so there's a lot of moving parts here, and I want to be able to lay it all out to you to see how we can move forward with this. Because bottom line is, today it's going to cost $10.6 million to get that South Harbor, that north end of the South Harbor dredged. And with the permits in place, that who knows how long they're good for, times are changing. And, it could be exponentially much costlier if any of these if these permits, if we can't use them. Plus they're willing to pick up, 5.8 of it, and we're on the hook for 4.7 of it. So, might be the best deal we ever get. Now, that, that's kind of up to the assembly to decide if we're going to pull the plug, but, pull the trigger on this or what. But I want you guys to kind of be aware of what, again, this is.
Does the Corps do their own dredging, or they contract it out?
No, they contract
And is
it
there
out.
a chance that the cost may be substantially less?
part of that is a conversation that we're going to have on Friday with Somerville. There's an opportunity for us to just hire the Corps to do the whole thing, which that's where that 4.7 comes in. Now, if we go and make a deal with the contractor, we hire somebody like Somerville to implement our portion of it, yes, there's a good chance that we could get it considerably lower. So it, it could be, instead of 3.3 for our portion, we could maybe get it down to, a lot less. Their number includes 20% contingency. Their number, includes the very highest, average that they can find, just because they like to. So, yeah, there's definitely, there's a chance. And they came out and said, a lot of places, what they do is, they do their portion, and then we bring somebody in, and they're already footing 90% of the mob and demob, so we got that going for us. And if we hire and contract out to the same contractor, we'd have to check through our, our code to make sure that it's legal, but.
I wonder if there's any other dredging projects in the near future in Southeast?
Well, in the past, what did the North Harbor, Robin Lakely's nephew got it, and he subbed it to Pacific Pile. That's who did it, so they're out of Juneau. There's definitely local, not Petersburg per se, but there's definitely local. They sub to then the local guys. Who knows? They might sub to one of our local contractors for portions of it. So.
Questions?
Here's the entire feasibility study.
It's a big thing to digest, and
It's huge.
we're just starting to get up to speed on it, so we'll
Yep.
probably have to have another meeting about this.
Oh, definitely. I think we'll have to have a meeting that's just straight this after we, hear. And it'll probably be sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I would expect it to be, Thanksgiving time.
And your meeting's this Friday?
Yeah, Friday at 4 o'clock, or at 10 a.m.
And Joel, did you follow all that?
Yeah, I did it. Thanks.
You got any questions?
No, that is a lot to digest, and there'll be questions later for sure.
And again, the core is fall of 21.
They would like to break ground fall of 2020.
2020.
Yes, and be done April of 2021. Yikes.
When
I mean,
are
it's
they-
like,
When are they expecting some feedback from the Petersburg Borough?
they, sooner rather than later, they'd like us to, start signing contracts and get this baby going. Now that they've taken their 5.5 years, they'd like us to be.
I don't see anything we can really vote on here yet, but
No.
is the assembly aware of this issue?
So many assembly members come and go. I mean, this is brought to them, annually, but I don't know how well
It might be good to
they're.
bring forward to them at the next meeting.
Oh,
so they
certainly.
can start chewing on
City
this
At
managers.
least a letter or something? Sorry.
and the back.
So you may be looking at a special election?
That's what I was just saying, how you get people to vote for this.
Yeah, we would, if it, depends on, what we talk about with Somerville and really getting a calendar, it may require, well, it would require, if they want to break ground and we have the money. We have the 1.4 in savings right now. We have that money.
More than that, right? 3 point something.
Yeah, we've got 3.8, but we've got enough to sign to move to the next step, which would be dredging the main part. It is, which would be would be dredging the common area. That's really what they care about. And if we're going to do the rest of it, which because of the rest of it is hinged on the commercial fleet as well as recreational users, subsistence users, all those kind of things, that project needs to be done. But we have time to get the money together. So it may not require, we have to, at some point, we have to get the money. So I would imagine it would require a special, election or what, not election, but
Historically, what is the purpose of your savings account?
for Well, okay, so historically, the raw fish tax went into the general fund. In 2005, we convinced the then assembly that because the municipality owns these harbors and we have this municipal match grant, that we need to start setting money aside. So, in 2005, we started retaining raw fish tax, of which we, between Strumdahl and I, we put all of that money in our enterprise fund. The enterprise fund is meant to maintain the harbor, whatever that means to you, whether it means buying property to expand, whether that means a whole host of things. It's for the harbor enterprise to conduct and do its business.
So this would qualify.
Oh, yes, this is probably the biggest deferred maintenance. I brought up the South Harbor as our next big deferred maintenance. All those 84 built floats, fingers, the main float. That's our next big one, and I'm looking at 50 to 55 years. So we've got roughly 18 years before we're going to have to do, complete replacement. Prior to that, I'm hoping, that's a big portion of what we do all day long, is maintaining the South Harbor. And so I've got a request into Somerville right now to design finger floats that we can build, my staff can build and replace. They'd be built roughly on the same design as the North Harbor, because it's much easier for us to maintenance versus those concrete floats in the South Harbor. They're getting to be a nightmare. So we'll get another 15, 20 years out of them, but after that, I think we're going to phase out concrete and move into probably mostly wood.
I did see a paragraph in the full report where it mentioned their stuff, and they call it the GNF, their general navigation features that they pay 90% of, and then they call us LSF, or local service facilities. They sort of linked. The only reason they're going to do their share is so we can use our share, and if we can't use our share, they're not very interested in doing their share, is what I kind of took as the...
Yeah. It's all or nothing.
They're not necessarily just going to do their part without us doing our part.
Right.
So, but I would love to have more ability to look at what, if there are any choices to make, if it's just a done deal, take it or leave it, or if there are any adjustments we can make.
It's a done deal, take it or leave it on the project, but there are a couple of different ways to fund it.
All right, do we want to talk about this anymore?
It's a big number.
Chew on it. The report's in color. It's really good on a computer. It's got pictures, and it's like over 100 pages. It goes into
197
It goes
pages.
way beyond anything I would have ever thought. But it did cost like $700,000, right?
850, yep.
So you better get some enjoyment out of it. Yeah.
And that being said, we knew when we went into that, then all this information, the permits and all that stuff is ours. So if we choose to walk away from this, we can, knowing that this information is ours. We can come back and use it in 10 years. The permits probably won't be in place, the deal won't be there, but the information will be there. The surveys and all of the soil samples and those kind of things will all be there, so.
How many vessels this summer went aground in that one big hump?
Well, yeah, I think Bob put some pictures there. I know we shut your company down at least twice, and we shut down tour ship egress in and out a couple of times. There was probably a dozen or so. The biggest impact was the Southeast went aground, and you sent over 3 seine skiffs and tried like hell for 2 hours to get them off, but they couldn't.
No.
So in the meantime, you had 50 guys on the beach crew sitting there going like this. And that was beautiful. I mean, I sent that whole thing to the Corps and said, this is why it's needed. The next day, we had the Teresa Marie go aground roughly in the same spot. We had a tour ship floating out in the middle, couldn't get around them. So not only do you have the people on board, but you have all of the businesses in town that are sitting around going, okay, well, when can they get in so I can take them for their kayak trip or their, airplane trip or whatever, so. And it's only gonna happen more and more. A -4, you've got about 8 feet of water.
All right, well, it seems to be, it's more than just a harbor issue, it's a whole town, whole waterfront, which in this place is kind of a whole town issue, so there's a lot more to do on this, so.
Brian, can you make sure that we get copies of those?
Yeah, you bet,
That'd
you
be
bet,
awesome.
yep,
Thank you.
yep, this is I'll send the whole thing out. The executive summary is just the first 3 pages, 4 pages.
You okay if we move on, Joel?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Looking forward to getting that summary.
Good. The next issue is the petrol and trade update.
Yeah, so where we are right now, we're still in a holding pattern. There has been a site investigation, they call it Tier 1, that was done, looking at just pictures primarily, and they've located 3 different spots that could be further investigated. One is under the concrete pad where the 96 tanks were. Another one is they noticed in one of the aerial photos there were some 55-gallon drums that had been stacked up. Wherever that is, that should be tested. And then there's a domestic fuel line, a domestic fuel tank that provided the fuel for the furnace to heat the office in the building. So those are being looked at. Petro, they threw it back to Petro and said, hey, are you willing to have this done? This is a public, this is a public document that goes out that will affect, who knows, sales to forever. If anybody looks at that, probably they'll have to do the second stage, which would be the second environmental. So I haven't heard, it doesn't come through me, all of this is going through Steve. So that's one aspect. They had a mold study done. The mold report just came back on Friday, and they did find some mold in there. One area of concern is the office. That was the biggest area of concern. We've always maintained we're going to gut it anyway, and it's just going to be storage. It's not going to be a satellite office. So that was, not so surprising. And there is mold that is in the insulation in the warehouse. So like most facilities like that probably haven't been heated, same type of thing, but it's dormant. So it's not an active grow site, but it's just, things are out of control. So anyway, so my question is, what it's gonna, the cost to fix it or to gut it. My guys can't do the gutting. We'd have to hire professionals with respirators to come in and do the gutting, apparently, of the office part. The other part, maybe wouldn't have to. You'd take out the insulation and then, I think, clean it. There's a cleaner and then some kind of spray, and then you'd re-insulate the roof. So.
Is that the problem? The initial problem was from the leaky roof?
No, I think it's just probably not been heated. It's everywhere. Yeah, there was one little leak on the office side, not in the warehouse. Warehouse never had any leaks. So.
Okay, have they done that secondary study on the 3 areas that you talked about?
No, Petro is running it up their chain. All of this came back, both of these came back within the last 2 weeks.
Are we paying for it, or is Petro?
Well, that's the thing, trying to get Petro to pay for it.
Which it should.
It's there. So just to see where that comes down. So we're still kind of in a holding pattern there. Don't know, how bad Petro wants us, and if they do, so.
And the assembly, if I remember right, the last time, they basically just decided to put everything on hold until this second study came back, right?
Well, yeah, or if Petro said no, then we'd make a decision then. None of it seemed that crazy to me. We have zero plans to do anything with the concrete for a variety of reasons. One, it keeps up that side of the fill. I mean, if you take that out, you're gonna have to replace it with rock or, fill, I mean, why would you remove it? There's no plans for turning it, into anything. We're not gonna build a structure there. The only thing we have ideas on doing, which I've, said from the very beginning, is in the budget, is to bring in fill to level it out where those sumps are, and go from there. We plan on putting equipment. Our 100-foot pilings that I have on hand in case something happens. Just stuff that's scattered all over. We bring all the stuff that we have in our different locations to that site, and use the building as indoor storage and the grounds as outdoor storage. And we figure we could easily come up with 75,000 yards to lease, which is at 32 cents a square foot, or not 75 yards, 75,000 square feet, which is roughly 75 by 100, right? We can all visualize that. Not a lot of the property. Lease it for, 32 cents a square foot. I'm just throwing that out there because our outdoor is 26 cents a square foot. Ours is far and above everybody else that's private. So, if somebody wants to go private, they'd save money doing it. But we're full, and so we figure we can make 28,000 just on that, which is roughly what we're losing on the.
Pretty big corridor in there, unused space.
Yeah, there's a lot of property. So we're kind of thinking that the way we break it up, just for the neighborhood aspect of traffic and things like that, is we would keep the upper part for the harbor, nicely organized and just us coming and going, and the lower part would be for what we would lease out, because there's 2 access points. You could come and go and not have to go up into the neighborhood, just so that the neighbors wouldn't have to see trailers with crab pots on it or whatever, or black cod pots or whatever, that kind of stuff. So, and the facility, the warehouse with the loading dock, that would be our work area, and where the old office was, gut that all, put everything from our four-wheeler to our, we probably put a garage door on the front of it, on rollers that you'd roll up, drive your four-wheeler in, drive, put our everything from toilet paper to storage of, replacement power washers and fire hoses and pumps and all that kind of stuff. So.
Let me check in with Joel here. Joel, how are you doing? You want to talk to Glo about anything regarding the...
No, sounds good. I can hear you fine.
Glo, do you need anything from us on this?
Not really. I think, it might be back to you guys to decide if you want to, throw some more money at it, but really it's nothing that's going to, we're not going to have to go this far. It's still, I've provided you with the kind of the breakdown on different options. I think there's been 10 different options considered, and it's still by far is the cheapest one for us to go. If we're going to go and have to build a new facility, again, on borough property, whether it's waterfront property or up in the Muskeg somewhere, we're going to have to do the development plus build the facility. We've got documented costs on all of that. We don't have that money, especially if we're looking at this South Harbor dredge. And we don't have the money to build new. And it's really not a good option to stay with what we're doing. Again, the reason why we're doing what we're doing is because we didn't own these harbors. We took over ownership in 2006, and now we've got big investment that we need to be able to maintenance. So you've heard my spiel many, many, many times.
This board several years ago affirmed and reaffirmed the idea of the land trade, but then we've had the fire there at the Public Works facility, has there been any what-if discussions? It's my with Public Works or whatever, it's my understanding that the jury is completely out on that yet. They're waiting for feedback from the insurance company.
They got that back.
And that must have been pretty recent, I bet.
Yep. Last
And, I think Public Works was expecting to get an amount for just a bare bones replacement of what was there. I think they're also guessing that it would be close to the cost of a new facility. But what I'm leading up to is, would there be any advantages to joining them with a new facility?
Again, we would be expected to foot 100% of the cost of our portion. No insurance company is going to come and build,
Yeah.
the harbor just on the backs of that. Chris got those numbers back, John. So for rebuilding what is there, the construction company they went to, the insurance company went to for their quote, who is their normal person that does this, quoted them $1.4 million to repair what is there. Not to build new. Let's tear it down. I mean, so you're still going to have the foundation. You're going to have $1.4 million. So, again, they're not going to, no insurance company is going to build you a building that's, twice as big to accommodate another department. We'd end up having to pay for it. So what Joe and what I know proof of by going to the state, square footage for commercial is about $200 a square foot. So for the square footage we'd need would be between, if you're going to get 1,000 square feet or you're going to get 1,500 square feet, you're looking, and that's, the state built theirs for $307,000. They don't have any water and sewer to it. They've got electricity. It's not insulated. We're still going to have to, the insurance company's not going to build us a wing of the Public Works. Public Works have come out numerous times and said, we don't have the space for you. So if you do want to build up in our compound, you're going to have to develop muskeg out in the back, essentially. So I don't know if that answers your question, but those numbers are back, 1.4 million to replace what's there. And they're not replacing it, they're just rebuilding what's there.
I just remember the early 2000s when the fire hall discussions were taking place for the new facility there, and often it was brought up, should we share this with the police department? And there was a reticence from both that they just didn't want to share it, and I'm not so sure that was the best decision at the time.
Well, it's the difference, though, is that's a general fund, of which Public Works is general fund. We're not general fund, so we don't get any of those, bells and whistles that come with being a department under general fund. The harbor is 100% responsible for their own.
I'd say though, still, if someone wants to give us something to look at, we look at it. If someone wants to write up a plan,
Yeah, sure.
we hear about these things. I heard about that in the context of the election, but we hear about these things, but we don't ever have anything to really review that's other than just an idea. We're not professionals to flesh those out, but happy to look at something if someone wants to propose it, someone listening.
Yeah.
Did, Max, you as a visitor, do you have anything to weigh in on this, or are you here for the resolution?
Well, I don't have to really weigh in. I mean, I'd just like to point out that you guys do take general funds, though, and you are taking raw fish tax money. So you know you are an enterprise fund. You are taking that money. I mean, there are general funds that go to the harbor every year. You notice for, deferring. And it's not always going to be there. That's been my main concern with this whole thing about growing. I want to do it as cheap as possible if it has to be done.
Yeah, that's, you can look at the raw fish tax from the historical raw fish tax. It's been
Yeah,
in
we have it
place.
here in our packet. I was looking at it, and it looks like
It's been historical.
every penny of raw fish tax that we've ever got is just about to be eaten up by the dredging, it looks like.
Right.
Well, no. You look at the first part, we started taking raw fish tax in 2005, okay? We were broke in 2014. We used every penny from 2005 to 2014 to build your North Harbor, okay? So after the 2013, then that is what's going towards the dredge. So we've
I guess my
collected,
point is, though, that's not 4.8 million yet.
What?
That looks like maybe 3 million at the very most.
right,
So, but anyway, yes, my point, I guess I'd say about the raw fish tax, if anyone ever had any question that the raw fish tax was subsidizing an enterprise, I think you have to realize that the dredging here is a lot bigger than the enterprise itself. It's a whole town sort of a infrastructure thing. It's pretty hard to argue a 28-foot pleasure boat there that they need to pay for this dredging exclusively as a ratepayer.
I guess I just don't have it just as a rosy as a outlook for the industry itself. We've already lost the major processor here since 2004. It's gone. We don't get the revenues anymore. We have a consolidation of the fleet, which is sent a lot of processing in other places. We don't have what we had before. I mean, with IFQs, the Apple resource is going to consolidate. We have a 1% limit, and that's the way it's going. So we're possibly going to see less raw fish processing. I mean, there's a good chance of it. I just think it's good to be conservative. That's my only point. And that's a good use of those funds to dredge that out. I get it. I'm 100% behind that. I mean, that's something that we're maintaining that we have. I'm just worried about growing.
well, and I think if you look at raw fish tax since 1976, you can see that by far the biggest years are from 2005 and on. So, you're looking at many of the biggest years. So it's been on an upwards pattern since prior to that.
I do
I don't think
appreciate
it'll be
it.
very good this year.
I appreciate it.
That's what they said last year. Yeah, I mean, sure, it goes up and down. It goes up and down, it goes up and down. Sure, and I agree with you.
But we're losing fisheries
But
too.
to realize also that this is statute, this is state statute. It's not the whim of one guy that can decide, okay, we're going to take all the raw fish tax and throw it one way. That it's state statute. They have communities like Dutch Harbor, 80% of their entire community's income and operations is based on raw fish tax.
Oh, I
You're going to lose communities like Cordova will go bankrupt in a year. Seward will go, Kodiak, Dutch Harbor. So to throw that out as, well, it's going to go, I mean, I guess those are such things that,
I'm not talking about maybe getting rid of it.
Gotta.
I'm talking about the industry in itself. I mean, yeah, I know how
Sure.
important raw fish tax is. When I talked to the Yakutat mayor when it first came out, I think his LPS was like
yeah,
50-60% of their whole budget.
right.
And they don't have that much fish. So, I mean, it's not a growing thing. Our fisheries are not going to grow. The value of our fisheries is not necessarily growing. The volume's going down. I mean, there's a lot of red flags out there. One was called sea otters. We just had a big chum failure. We've got it right now. We're in the middle of a pink salmon catastrophe here that's been going on for a few years. It could continue for another 10. It has historically. We don't know what we're up against.
No, you're talking to a daughter of a troller.
I-
I've been waiting for the
I know.
sky to fall
Yeah,
for
that's the other.
49 years.
You've got like a huge latency rate in the trawlers. You don't even have the boats anymore.
Yeah.
All right,
And we're looking at a
let's
decrease in boats.
get back on track. Thanks, Max.
Okay, I've done that part. Just food for thought.
Do you want to stick around for the resolution about the registering the
Oh, yeah, I could take her.
automatically, or
That'd be great.
that is coming up? And so I guess if no one objects, we'll move on to new business.
He's-
All right. First one is the match, municipal harbor match program. It's a resolution to to support the assembly writing a resolution, is that what, I mean?
Yeah, so every year we come to you and ask if you'd kick this up to the assembly to just say, hey, we're in support of the continuing on the municipal harbor match grant. There are listed, I think in your packet, it shows you what communities are on the hook. Here, under the resolution, the first one, you have the City of Cordova, City of Burroughs, Sitka, City of Ketchikan, Homer, Edna Bay, Cape, Juneau, and municipalities of Anchorage. They have all have projects that equal $12,145,000. The second, so the other side of that is the state would match
Where is
up to
this?
that.
Where is
That
this?
is under the resolution, in your packet. Right there, the last 2 pages of your packet.
Oh, okay.
No, of your, under your agenda.
Oh, the agenda.
Yeah, of the packet,
didn't find
the
it.
agenda packet. So that's all we're saying. We don't have a dog in the fight this year, but it's sure nice when we do. The last one we had was the North Harbor. They kicked in 3.5, we kicked in 3.5 million. We got the Public Works or Power and Light to put in $1.26 million, and we ended up with the North Harbor, of which we do not have a loan for. She was bought and paid for right then and there. So it's just a nice thing to do. The city, the assembly usually has no problem supporting this one.
So I'd entertain a motion that we recommend that the assembly sign on this resolution, is that?
Yeah, ask the assembly to,
This is almost a consent agenda type thing.
Yeah. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Joel, did you see the resolution there?
Yeah, I've got it. Looks good. Aye.
Okay, everyone supports that.
Okay, then the last one is about the, if you remember last year, or actually it was 2 years ago, where we started talking about what are we going to do with all these derelict vessels, yada, yada. So the state came up with law, didn't inform anybody about it, came through, and then implemented this program where every vessel had to re-register, and in the case of commercial fishing, had to register a second time and pay $15 in order to get the okay or get licensed. So the harbor masters immediately, when the first guy mentioned it to me, I was like, what in the world are we talking about? I went right back to the harbor masters and said, what did you guys do? And, well, we just, it's for the good of the order. And I said, whoa, no, we can't. We've got to come up with a fix for this. So through that, the voting board came up with this resolution that asked that the automatic registration for active vessels that are already in the CFEC database. So they would be, already in this. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at now.
Max knows a lot about this. What do you?
I just have a question. Well, is this a new language for the bill? Is it?
Yeah, changing the bill.
Sarah Machichi has it, and is he going to go forward with it?
I don't-
It was Machichi's bill originally. I heard Stoops was going to do it, but then I haven't heard anything. I heard there was language, there was going to be language discussion, but I haven't.
See, nothing's started yet, so I don't,
So is there actual language? Is there actually a sponsor? Because the bill has,
Right.
it's a new bill, it has to
Right,
go.
right.
Yeah, to amend this thing.
I don't know.
This first one I heard about the automatic registration, but it sounds fine. We already are registering public data.
Yeah, simplify the process for the commercial guys already.
Yeah, on the surface, it sounds great to me. Any of you guys, you familiar with the issue we had with the Alaska registration, even though we're already in the database, and it just seemed very redundant. So this is a good step, maybe getting that made automatic, since we're already registered. You don't have to wait in line at DMV.
Good.
There may be opposition to it. from the state itself. I see it as a revenue source. So,
Even if it had to be an additional revenue on it still would be taking a trip to the DMV, which
Hit and miss.
that's worth $20 to me sometimes, at least that time of year, so.
Not to, yeah.
that was $25 every 2 years.
Anyone want to weigh in on this? I guess we need a motion to recommend the assembly.
I got my comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, thanks. Welcome back, Gary, in the background there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my only comment to it is there's going to be an additional fee of some sort somewhere, and there always is. And I'm against that, but this is better than the alternative. I doubt that it's going to be as easy as check a box, and you're probably going to have to buy AK numbers for your boat now, and you're going to have to a few more bucks every year, and that's just the way government works. So that's about my only comment for it, but it straightens it out from a trip to the DMV. That's good, but it's like a tax, and they're going to tax you one way or another, and a less of a tax is still a tax for something that's already there. But anyway, I think this will, hopefully it cleans it up, and well, I guess we'll see, like was comment there, any other language, or if it's possible. So, but I'll be voting in favor of it, but just my comment for it. Thank you.
Thanks.
One more comment.
John?
I agree with Joel, and the concept is great, but I also remember the legislation that I testified to several times at the LIO for the derelict vessels, and was frequently reassured that my concerns would be taken care of in the legislation, and then when it passed, they were not. And so the concept is great, but we do need to be careful of what the final form of this is.
Visitor Max.
I'm sorry, I should take over the meeting here. But John, what were your concerns? Because you're dry storage?
The past legislation had specific protection for boat yards that would take in a derelict vessel that would protect the boatyard owner with very simple procedures for taking ownership of a derelict vessel that would be in a boatyard without having to go to an attorney and get title and so forth. And I pleaded that they retain that, and they said that people I talked to, the different legislators, were in favor of that, but then when it finally passed, that section was dropped entirely. And so now, if I have a derelict vessel, I have to hire an attorney and go through very expensive steps just to get ownership of it so that I can dispose of that vessel. So it really, none of that really applies here, but it's sort of a sore point that I was assured that they would give my points great consideration, and they did not.
Yeah, I just, well, I think that's a pretty important part of it, and that's language that you probably get incorporated. I mean, if it's not written up already, I mean, it shouldn't matter where a derelict vessel is. It shouldn't matter if it's in a harbor or on dry storage.
Yeah, I'd like if you can keep us posted if you see anything.
Yeah, I'll,
I would like to see the wording and maybe weigh in on it, so.
Just made a comment. It's my understanding, because I talked to the lady up there, like I have both state registered vessels and documented vessels. And she said, because part of this is getting vessels titled, but if your vessel is documented, then you have to register it, but you don't have to get it titled because it's already documented with the federal government.
Right, they just want you to buy the
And
sticker.
only, you get a sticker. Your state registered vessels, anything I thought it was over 26 feet has to be titled. So they need to be able to title things so that they can go back on it. So our harbors don't end up like the Tonka log transfer facility where there's like 2 dozen vehicles down there, alders growing up around them, and those are all titled and registered. So,
right.
But anyway.
Well, anyway, I'm in favor of this, at least it's a step in the right direction. Should we vote on it? Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimously for it. So, what's next?
Yeah, communications, I don't have any.
Okay, so I do think we're gonna need a meeting within the next couple months about update on the dredging and update on the.
Maybe we could get people's schedules.
Okay, we'll do that after, maybe we'll do that after the meeting, or,
Or who's going to be around
okay, go for
in
it.
November? Who's going to be here in November?
I'll be here,
All of November?
pretty much. Yeah.
I'm only here for a week in the middle, basically from the 11th to the 18th.
11th to the 18th, okay. John, are you around? You're going to be gone the first part of December.
Just 2 days, the next week, Monday,
Oh,
Tuesday,
oh,
yeah.
Okay, and
I'm gone.
you're gone all of November, okay. And as long as we meet on Monday or Tuesday, Casey is not available, so. Okay, well, maybe it'll be, are you around in December? What's December's like? Who's here in
I'm not
December?
real certain.
Okay, you're here? Are you back in December?
I'll be back from the 15th until the 26th.
15th to the 26th, you're in town?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Casey should be back by then. I have on here discussion items, policies and procedures.
John brought that up.
And I prefer zero discussion on any of this at this time, but I just wanted to throw it out here and maybe get it on an agenda for the next meeting. And even though I've been on this board for 3 years, I'm not real confident that I know what its purpose is. And, you know, once before I suggested that we have a mission statement at least, but that didn't go over very well. The meeting frequency, we've been meeting once to twice a year. I don't think we're really servicing the public well enough by so few meetings. I don't know how to call for a meeting or how to get stuff on the agenda, but I guess it's my fault for not asking more. But with new members, you know, it might be good to discuss that a little bit. When I look at the comprehensive plan that Bill suggested, I see lots of different issues there that pertain to us, and they are good issues, and I think we need to look at those and see how well the community is doing with that, and it does pertain to ports and harbors. It's been suggested that we have some type of a pump-out facility here for effluent, and I think that would be a good thing to discuss as well. But anyway, after meeting fairly infrequently, this meeting's going on for a little over an hour and a half, which isn't bad, but I get pretty exhausted of the long meetings. And so, you know, maybe slightly more frequently would be good. I called Wrangell. They meet every month. They knock off in the summer months, but they average 8 meetings a year.
It's good to know. We took a little bit of a hit when we lost Mike. I think sort of gotten a little bit slack. I agree, we've got to pull things back together. It would be nice to have a little bit of documentation in our little folders here about what we are, why we're here. Like I had some confusion whether we even call our meetings, whether Globe calls them, whether I think we kind of serve at the pleasure of the assembly, so, but I don't know if they've ever really told us to have a meeting, so it'd be good to know. If we do just get together without a purpose, nobody really kind of listens to us anyway, so you kind of wonder why we're getting together, you know, so. But yeah, I'd like to get us tuned up a little bit better.
Yeah, I come to work every day, so, I mean, I'm there every day, so it's just a matter of getting you guys, I mean, this was a real effort to get, you know, 5 of you here and 1 calling in. So just, you know, I don't know, I mean, right now, if we picked a day, you know, the second Tuesday of every, I think we would probably run risk of having less meetings than we have now. So,
I think we should
For
probably
me, it
always
would be easier, like, I could adjust my travel schedule as little as it is to avoid a harbor board meeting and be able to attend.
It might be good to always have a fall meeting just to plan out what we're going to do, because obviously summer meetings just don't happen very often. We're all gone so much.
Or even do several meetings. How about a January
Yeah.
plan, get some dates, put them out there.
All right, let's do our homework and talk about that. Next meeting, we'll put it on the agenda.
I might put it out there, for me, meeting in the middle of the day is really hard.
Okay.
Just midday meetings, because this time of year I'm working budgets and
All right.
it's pretty difficult.
Wait, write that down in Dawn's. Perfect.
yeah.
Are we getting into any trouble with the Open Meetings Act by sharing ideas? As long as it's not being voted on?
Oh, outside of a meeting?
Yeah, something like,
That is dangerous water, I don't know.
who would like to meet in the daytime, in the evenings, stuff like that. I think that's all.
You are an
legal.
advisory board. You do not make any rules. Again, I don't work for you. I work for the city manager who works for the assembly. He works for you. So that, just to remember, that's the chain here. So you guys could meet all day long, every day that you wanted to. I'm going to show up, every so often when I have something to, just because it's, there really isn't anything that I take direction from you on. So that being said, you're an advisory board to the assembly. The assembly will call upon you when they want your input.
In other words, we don't have any concerns with the Open Meetings Act by
I don't-
communicating among
Well, we
ourselves.
better look into that.
I don't know where, I don't even know what I'd begin to look at.
Who pays for all this? Is this the harbor that pays for our
Harbor department.
stuff, not the borough?
Yep. Harbor department pays for it all.
You don't have to be here?
I could give you a written report.
Who would take our minutes?
Yeah. But then, that's the other thing, is you've got to depend on who you're gonna do all this stuff for. Just to sit around and chat, it's great, but
Well, I think we can
There's-
definitely chat about this.
yeah, there's some big things here. But
These are not financial issues or things that, but, so yeah, we'll try to,
And if there's particular concerns that any of you have on the operations in the harbor, again, you can come talk to me at any time, for specific things. I come to you with some real specific things when I need your support as a public to influence the assembly on all the things that I've brought before you. Because I'm going to move forward, and sometimes there will be times where you and I don't agree on things. But the chain is this way, and I'm underneath that, so you could come up with all sorts of suggestions and, day-to-day operations, and, if they're good, I'll probably,
My understanding is we're an advisory board to the assembly.
yep,
So if there's a demonstrable need to make recommendations to the assembly, then let's have enough meetings to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
I don't know if more meetings is gonna, necessarily be a
confuse
good thing.
issues, I don't know.
Or be necessary.
probably 2 meetings a year just to stay functional. In my experience with some boards I've been on, if
I would agree with
you
that.
don't meet enough, it just starts to fall apart.
Right.
That might be good. So yeah, we'll talk about that more next meeting. And I think that'll be maybe within a month, huh?
Yeah, if we can get a group together. And I'll send out that feasibility study and read to your heart's content.
Nice. Anything else, you guys? Ready to adjourn? Okay,
So move.
You want us to put our names on these, Cliff?
Yeah, you can take those.
Cool. Thank you. See you, Joel.
see you in December.
Adjourn.
We have a folder for you, Joel.
What?
We have a folder for you.
Hard copy.
Yeah.
Would you love to have some more paper?
Mayor John.
Takes my mind off this,
just for cracking crap.
Oh, yeah.
Still.
Hey, thanks for calling in, Joel. I'll sign off here. See you later.
Thanks for the sweet stuff.
Yeah,
Thanks, you guys.
I know, isn't that pathetic?
You got peanut butter on it?
I know, I'm sorry. I didn't. I know.
Yeah, it's about that big, I think.
Oh, see that.
Oh, you saw it?
Gatos?
Yeah.
Oh, you like Gatos? Oh, that's great.
I only use it the once a year though, because it's so bad for you.
Well, we got it in our,
Going on, because it's,
Bucky's gonna teach me to make that this year.
Expensive.
Maybe before.
and even if it goes down,
I had his last year.
it'll be the public's paying for it, still a
So
So if I send you an email to remind you, would you
Get those arrows?
email me the physical properties?
sure, yeah, you bet. You betcha.
Only 7.5 from the knock.
Right, and if they're getting rid of one bond, so that's a
Yeah.
perfect slide
Yeah,
in.
it would slide in nicely.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting, I talked to the Corps this morning about this, and she's like, okay, I see, I mean, I get it, but, you know, you're not gonna have